There are things happening in your kitchen right now, today, this week, that you have done 1,000 times without ever questioning them. Habits passed down from your parents, habits that feel like common sense, habits that feel so obviously safe you'd never think to Google them. And yet, some of the most trusted kitchens in the world, restaurant kitchens run by professionals who've spent decades studying food safety, would look at what you're doing and quietly cringe. Not because you're careless, not because you don't care about your health, but because you were taught the wrong thing by people who were taught the wrong thing before them. An entire chain of good intentions passing down bad information for generations. Today, I'm breaking down 5 of these myths. And the third one on this list is something almost everyone gets wrong. So stay with me, because you might be doing it again tonight without even realizing it. Let's start with the one almost everyone believes without question, the idea that washing raw chicken before cooking it makes it safer. It feels logical, doesn't it? You're rinsing away whatever's on the surface, cleaning it before it hits the pan. But here's what's actually happening when you do that. The moment water hits that raw chicken under your faucet, it doesn't just wash bacteria off the meat, it sprays it. Tiny droplets, invisible to the eye, launching outward in every direction, landing on your countertop, your sink handles, your dish towels, sometimes traveling further than you'd ever imagine possible from something as simple as running water. You then go about your day, touching those surfaces, wiping your hands on that towel, completely unaware that you've just spread bacteria across your kitchen instead of removing it. The cooking process itself, the actual heat, is what kills what's dangerous. The washing step does nothing except create risk where there wasn't one before. And this is just the beginning, because myth number 2 might be even harder to accept. Here's something that's going to challenge what you were taught as a child, maybe by a grandmother, a mother, someone you trusted completely. The 5-second rule, you know the one. Food falls on the floor, you scoop it up fast enough, and somehow that speed is supposed to save you from whatever's living on that surface. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Bacteria doesn't wait politely for 5 seconds before deciding to attach itself to your food. Transfer happens almost instantly, sometimes in under a single second, depending on the surface and the type of food that hit it. Wet or sticky foods pick up contamination even faster than dry ones. So that piece of fruit you scooped off the floor in record time, the one you ate anyway because it felt like a victory over the clock, was likely already carrying whatever was on that floor the moment it made contact. And speaking of things people trust without question, what I'm about to tell you next about your kitchen sponge might genuinely disturb you, so brace yourself for the next 60 seconds. Your kitchen sponge, sitting right there by your sink, used every single day to wipe down counters, scrub dishes, clean up spills, might be one of the dirtiest objects in your entire home. Not your bathroom, not your trash can, your sponge. Because it's constantly wet, constantly warm from dishwater, constantly covered in tiny bits of leftover food, it creates the exact environment bacteria dream of. Every time you wipe down a counter with it, you're not necessarily cleaning that surface. You might be transferring bacteria from one place to another, spreading it evenly across everything that sponge touches. And here's the part that really gets people. Most households keep using the same sponge for weeks, sometimes longer, rinsing it out and assuming that rinse resets everything back to clean. It doesn't. Microwaving it or replacing it far more frequently than you currently do isn't overly cautious behavior. It's actually catching up to what your kitchen has needed the whole time. And this next one, myth number 4, is going to make you think twice about something you do every single time you cook a big meal for your family. Letting food cool completely on the counter before putting it in the fridge. Something almost everyone was taught, something that feels considerate, like you're protecting your refrigerator from unnecessary strain. But here's what's actually happening while that pot of soup or that pan of rice sits there cooling slowly on your stove. Bacteria multiply fastest in a certain temperature range, often called the danger zone, the space between fresh off the heat and properly chilled. The longer food lingers in that zone, the more opportunity bacteria have to grow and in some cases release toxins that heat won't undo later. That old advice about letting things cool first wasn't malicious. It came from a time when refrigerators worked differently and people worried about damaging them with hot food. But modern refrigerators can absolutely handle it, and the real risk isn't your fridge struggling. It's your food sitting out longer than it should. Getting food into the fridge within an hour or 2 of cooking, even while it's still warm, is far safer than the habit most of us grew up with. And the final myth on this list might be the most surprising of all because it involves something you probably do without a second thought right after you finish cooking dinner. Wooden cutting boards versus plastic ones, and the assumption that plastic must be safer simply because it looks cleaner, because it can go in the dishwasher, because it doesn't have visible knife marks the way wood does over time. Here's what most people don't know. Those very knife marks and grooves in a plastic cutting board become permanent hiding spots for bacteria. Tiny canyons that trap moisture and food particles even after a thorough wash, places a sponge or dishwasher can't fully reach. Wood, surprisingly, has natural properties that actually draw bacteria down into the material and trap it there, away from the surface, where it eventually dies off, rather than sitting exposed and multiplying the way it can in the grooves of heavily used plastic. This doesn't mean plastic boards are dangerous or that you need to throw yours away tonight, but it does mean that grooved, heavily scarred plastic boards, the ones many of us keep for years because replacing them feels unnecessary, might actually be one of the quieter risks sitting in your kitchen right now. Here's what I really want you to take away from all of this. None of these mistakes happened because you weren't careful. They happened because the information you were given from parents, from grandparents, from well-meaning people who genuinely believed they were teaching you something helpful simply hadn't caught up with what we now understand. And that's the uncomfortable truth about so many habits we carry through life, not just in the kitchen. We repeat what feels familiar, what feels like common sense, without ever stopping to ask whether that common sense was actually built on solid ground or just built on tradition. Think about how confident you felt doing these exact things for years, washing that chicken, scooping food off the floor within 5 seconds, letting dinner cool on the counter before refrigerating it, using that same sponge week after week. That confidence wasn't false because you're careless. It was false because nobody ever handed you the update, and now you have it. The question is what you do with it starting tonight, the next time you're standing in that same kitchen, going through the same motions you've gone through 1,000 times before. This is really a story about awareness, about how the smallest, most overlooked habits in our daily lives can either quietly protect us or quietly work against us, and how most of us go years, sometimes decades, without ever knowing the difference. It's not about living in fear every time you step into your kitchen. It's about replacing outdated habits with better ones, small adjustments that cost you nothing but attention, and in exchange, protect the people you're cooking for every single day. So here's my question for you, and I genuinely want to know the answer. Out of these 5 myths, which one were you doing without even realizing it, and which one are you going to change starting with your very next meal? Drop your answer in the comments below, because I promise you someone else reading this right now grew up believing the exact same thing you did.